Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to a fresh new episode of Tea With Tay Pod, the only podcast that brings you tea as they hot. And speaking about tea, this episode is proudly sponsored by my faves, Lipton. My guest today is a clinical mental health therapist who practices from a trauma-focused lens with the goal of providing individuals with a safe space. My guest today is Funmto Ogunbanwo. She's the founder of Ibi Ayo Therapy and Wellness Limited. Please put your hands together for my guest. My friends, that's how they introduce you. Hey!
Thank you so much.
Welcome to this show. I've been waiting for this episode because I think that all of us need therapy in this country.
We absolutely do.
Ha, my sister, how are you?
I'm good.
Good to have you on my couch.
Good to be here.
Yeah,
Thank
finally.
you for having me. I know. I'm glad we made it happen.
Yeah. Okay, so as is the culture of this show, we always do background checks,
All right, cool.
We always do background checks, right?
Alrighty.
So, who is Funmto Ogunbanwo?
Wow. That's such a loaded question.
Yeah, please load me up. Oh, yeah.
Who is Funmto? Well, you already introduced me. I'm a clinical mental health therapist. That essentially means that I'm a psychotherapist. So I see people. I provide therapy services to people seeking support. I'm the founder of Ibi Ayo, which is a private practice here. So we provide therapy to individuals, to companies, organizations, workshops, all that good stuff. Aside from Funmto the therapist, I'm also a person. We're talking about how I don't really go out much. So I think I'm an easygoing person.
You are, to be fair.
I'm easygoing. I have siblings, almost all of them.
Yeah. How many do you have?
I have 3 siblings.
Right.
I'm the last born. Would you have guessed?
I guessed.
It's
Because
because
I
you
know
know.
that
I was going
was-
to say,
okay, I
it's
know
because
like
you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. Very easygoing. I like to chill.
Jesus girl.
Jesus, hallelujah.
I
Grace.
don't know how somehow, some way Jesus enters into this podcast, but
Come
then
on.
the
We
Holy
love
Spirit
it.
is here.
He's everywhere.
He's the ultimate therapist.
Come
My friend.
He's the ultimate counselor.
Is he?
Yes, no.
So he helps you in your own work,
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Ah,
Discernment
Bashata.
has to come in now.
Mhm.
Discernment, before somebody says something, it's like, I already know what it is.
Okay, before we take you to church, let's come back. Okay, so why therapy though? Because you could have been anything, like a lawyer. You could have
Yeah.
been, because your temperament is so, like, I like it. You're so demure. Is that the word?
Come
you
on.
guys do.
I'm
use it.
easygoing.
Right. Easygoing, no stress. So you could have
Yeah.
anything, but why therapy?
So I think a little background is my parents are very easygoing in terms of like the stereotypical average Nigerian parents. They weren't any of those parents that were like, oh, you have to do this, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be anything. Like they let us pretty much pick what we wanted to do. And by us, I mean my siblings and I. And I mean, 2 of my siblings, right? They're both in the creative world, which now is accepted. But when they started, it wasn't. So I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. In primary school, I thought of being a lawyer. But then I was like, lawyers have to read. That's how I was even reading so much, but I still have to read as a therapist.
Right.
And then in my secondary school, we had this IT program where we were in SS2. We had to do like a 2-week internship. And at the time, I actually interned with Tosin Bucknor, rest in peace. And it was amazing. I loved it. And I just kept asking myself, like, okay, can I do this long term? And my dad is a journalist, so I was already exposed to that world. So I kept asking myself, like, okay, can I do this long term? And even though I enjoyed it, I was like, oh, I don't think I can do this like 9 to 5. This would be my everyday life. So then I started thinking about like, okay, what do I actually enjoy doing? And then I realized that I like talking to people. In my friend group, I was usually the one that people would come talk to when they needed advice. And I just like helping people figure things out. And like I said, my parents are very easygoing in terms of us choosing our careers. So I decided to study psychology. So I have my bachelor's in psychology and communication. And while I was getting my bachelor's, I really started to see the treatment gap that existed in like mental health care in Nigeria. And especially like just Black people in the diaspora in general, because I was in America. And then that's when I decided that, okay, you know what? I'm going to go into therapy. And then I got my master's in clinical mental health counseling. And now we're here.
So how long have you been practicing for?
So So I've been practicing in Lagos for 2 years. Ibi Ayo is 2 years old. But as a collective, I've been in the mental health field for over 4 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me about the landscape in Nigeria. What therapy is like here?
Yeah.
And, what's it like? What's the difference between working here and there?
That's a good question because there's differences.
Always. We get more problems than them, Abby.
No, not even that too, but we have less structure.
Right. And I think Nigerians are just waking up to the idea of what therapy is.
Yes. And because we have less structure, though, it's unfortunate. There are lots of horror stories of people that have had horrible experiences with people that brand themselves as therapists, but they are not. So one of the big difference is that so I was in Texas, and in order for you to be a licensed mental health professional, there's a licensing body, right? You have to take an exam after you finish from your master's program. After you take the exam, you apply to the licensing body. They give you a provisional license, right? And then you're still getting supervision. After that, then you get your full license, right? So that's the big difference. In Nigeria, there aren't really any bodies.
Because anybody can wake up and become a counselor.
Exactly.
Sex therapist.
Exactly. And that's the big thing. When you now look closer, you see that this person has just done a coaching certification course. And it's for me, almost sometimes I've been taking it personal, though. After my 6.5 years of school,
yeah, even saying coaching certification. Somebody go read book on how to sex save this thing. Go on YouTube and just come and just be, that's on social media.
Exactly.
And open an entire establishment to do that.
Exactly. And be getting clients, right? And causing harm. So that's the big thing. There really isn't any structure. I mean, there are bodies out here, but there really isn't a licensing body, right? There isn't one body that's regulating the practice of therapy. So even me as a therapist, I mean, I'm ethical. I like to pride myself in that. But if I didn't have a strong background in ethics, I could be doing whatever. I could be causing harm to my clients.
Because nobody's regulating it.
Nobody's regulating it. So I could just be out here just causing harm to people. I've heard stories of therapists hitting on their clients, saying you're fine. Exactly.
That's why I told you I cannot do therapy here because my secret's too much.
Stop. But
I told you this thing.
No. But there are professionals that are ethical and they're out there.
I can imagine that, when you meet some clients, they've been burned by other therapists. So you have to start the work again from helping them to feel comfortable with you.
Exactly. And I always, whenever I encounter clients like that, I always commend their bravery, man. Because I'm just it is not easy for you to have a horrible experience in therapy and then decide that, you know what, I'm going to try again. That is such a brave thing. And I always commend them. And one of the ways that I even try to give people the option of deciding if they want to go with me is I have something that I do. It's a free 15-minute consultation. So essentially, it's your first time interacting with me because I believe that your first time interacting with me or a therapist, you shouldn't have to pay for it because what if you don't get along well? You've now spent your money and then...
right, there's that.
Yes, now, nobody's going to refund you your money back, if you don't get along well with them, so... And yes, obviously, in this industry, in my profession rather, time is money, but I'm okay to give up 15 minutes, So for those 15 minutes, it's the clients just asking me, the potential client just asking me questions, also me asking them questions to see if I even have the expertise that they need, that they are seeking, right? So
with all your training, you can get some cases that you're I can't do this.
Yes, no.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because...
You can also meet some clients who, even after paying, realize that you're not the right fit for them.
Yep.
And oh, really?
Yes, but again, that's why the 15-minute consultation is there, so that hopefully we can flag that right before we even get into you paying. The 15-minute consultation is free, right? So I'm asking things like, okay, what's going on to cause you to consider therapy at this point? So you're telling me, what you've been thinking about and stuff like that. And through that, I'm able to kind of gauge and assess. So an example would be if somebody needs medication management, right? They need to be on psychotropic medication. I'm not a psychiatrist. so I can't offer that service. So I would have to refer out.
Right.
If somebody needed like addiction management, right? I do have some training in addiction, but that is not my area of specialty. So I would feel more comfortable referring out. Exactly. So it's kind of like with medical doctors now, like you have specialties, right? Your GP is not going to, specialize in, I don't know, like orthopedics or something, right? They would have to refer out. But again, because there's no regulation, you can have somebody that has no business dealing with, I don't know, maybe something like trauma. But because they've woken up and decided that I'm a therapist now, they are now going to deal with it and then cause more harm
Even
to
traumatize them the more.
Yep.
So, I need us to define some certain concepts so that going forward, whoever is watching this podcast can understand all of these terms, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to help me define trauma, mental health, and therapy.
Okay.
Please.
Which one should I start with?
Mental health.
Okay, cool. So mental health is essentially, just as the name says, it's the state of our mental well-being. The WHO has an official definition, and it's being able to just live a fulfilling and healthy life where you're able to just navigate all the different demands that life brings your way. So just as we have physical health, mental health is really just the care of our mental and emotional state. This means that when we're faced with like difficulties, our reaction to said difficulties is within like a healthy range, right? So for example, if somebody should lose a loved one and they are crying, that is a healthy reaction, right? Because the loss of a loved one is something exactly. However, if somebody, still sticking with that example, if somebody loses a loved one and they're not really showing any emotions or they're not showing any, it might be like, okay, what's going on, right? So being able to have healthy reactions depending on the situation, right? That's mental health. You said trauma, Abi?
Yeah.
So trauma, we like to throw this word around.
I throw it around like 20 times a day.
No, and I think it's shout out to TikTok,
I'm actually really traumatized. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get into it.
Please come and make me cry on this podcast. I know if you
No,
I will send you out.
We're not going to do that. So trauma is essentially an emotional response to a distressing event, right? So trauma is how our body and our mind processes a distressing event. So a distressing event can range anywhere from something like losing a loved one, right? Because that is a distressing event. Let's say like the loss was, I don't know, God forbid, if it was like a car accident and you're a survivor in that accident and your loved one passed away. That is highly traumatic, right? So it can be something like that to maybe even living in an environment where there is political unrest or living in an environment like Lagos that is so stressful.
We're all traumatized, yeah.
So yeah, essentially trauma is just an emotional response to a distressing event.
Okay.
Yeah. And what was the last one? Depression?
Therapy.
Oh, therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy is short form for psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is when you are meeting with a mental health professional. So this is a professional that is qualified. So either a clinical psychologist, a clinical psychotherapist, or a psychiatrist. And it is designed to help you work through whatever difficulties that you may be experiencing. So the most common form of therapy is talk therapy, which is, just exchanging and talking. But in talk therapy, we're not gisting. It's not aimless. Right? We have goals in mind. We might introduce activities. There's homework assigned, things like that. But talk therapy is usually the most common form of therapy that people are referring to. So yeah.
Right.
I hope that helps everyone.
Yes, please, it does. I know you touched on it earlier, right? But I want to understand the mental health landscape in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Where we are as Nigerians, so even how we engage with therapy, mental health conversations.
Yeah. Okay. So where we are there's progress, right? It's not where we used to be like 5-10 years ago. So where we are, more people have heard of therapy, right? Either they may not have encountered it themselves, but maybe they've heard someone talk about it. And obviously, there's social media too. So social media is playing a role in that.
Around it.
Exactly. So we have more people understanding the concept of therapy as something that you seek out, like when you're having like an emotional difficulty. So we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of people seeking out therapy, right? So our progress is one that is upwards, right? In terms of people seeking out help.
Yeah.
However, there's still a lot of myths around therapy, and that's, like seeking out help, for example. Some people think that therapy is something that only like
people who are...
Exactly. I didn't want to use that, but yes, the people who are
Black
unstable. Yeah, exactly, right? Because that's a stereotype that even exists in the US, right?
Yeah.
So there's still that in Nigeria. There's people that maybe don't even understand the concept of like therapy or like talking to somebody. Like I recently told someone that I was a therapist now, and they were like, "Oh, so you just talk to people and they're okay, that's it." I was just like, first of all, I do more than talk. Like don't demean
But
it.
you do more than talk.
I do more than talk. Oftentimes, it's you that is doing most of the talking. If you go to a session and your therapist is talking more than you, then that's a little bit of a red flag.
Right.
Right.
So you listen more than you talk.
100%. 100%. Because I'm collecting a lot of information. Exactly. Right. So yeah, people don't really understand the concept of therapy. So this is where I have to do a lot of like psychoeducation and just like letting people know what therapy is about. And that's another reason why I even have the consultation, like I spoke earlier, so that you're first, you even have an understanding of what it is that you're about to get into. So that's our landscape in Nigeria. We're seeing more people seek help, especially younger people.
Right.
A lot of Gen Zs and millennials.
Right.
But we're also seeing older adults too. So, like our parents' generation, seeking help. Usually it's by the influence of like family members. So maybe one of their children has told them that, mommy, I think you should talk to somebody, right? But thankfully, they're usually like receptive to receiving that help. So, yeah.
You know what's very interesting?
What?
Before 2014, 2015, mental health was never a term or a conversation. Like this is very recent for us here, and thanks to social media, this conversation is going around. People are having more. What were people using to keep themselves sane? What was mental health? What was the thing that people would do back in the day to be mentally stable? Because obviously, this is not a new concept. Human beings have been existing forever, right? They've gone through trauma. They've gone through different things. What were people doing before now? Before this became a conversation?
A lot of people were talking to their pastor.
My sister! I did a video about that.
A lot of people were talking to their pastor.
I did a video about that.
Their pastor. They were talking to their pastor.
Nigerian moms and their pastors are like two peas in the pod.
Honestly.
You cannot separate her from her pastor.
Nope.
And it makes sense now. The older I get, it makes sense now because those were the only people they could talk to about their husband cheating, their children becoming delinquents, and whatever they call it. And that relationship just begins to make sense. But the pastors also were not professionals.
No.
They only had the Holy Spirit. And so they were not even spirit-filled. And
that spirit to get
pastors destroyed homes.
Yep. Yeah. So a lot of people were talking to their pastor. Maybe their doctor. Maybe. But oftentimes, if anybody is displaying any form of emotional instability, it's pastor you're calling now.
Yes.
Like, it's like, let's call pastor to come and pray, to come and this thing. I recently had a conversation where someone, was talking about having like health issues, right? That kind of just like sprung up on them. Sprung up on them. And their parents' reaction was like, let's call pastor.
Yes.
Let's call pastor to come and, pray against this demon, pray against that. And it's just like, have you people taken this babe to the hospital first? you know. So yeah, a lot of people were using just religion to cope, to deal with like their struggles. So, and it was usually from a place of fear, if we're getting real, right? So it's like any small thing, it's like, this is not of God. This is devil.
Yes.
This is demon.
Yes.
I need to cast it. I need to cast it.
Yeah.
But it's just like, hello. If you have, again, going back to that definition of mental health, right? It's a healthy reaction. If someone is growing up in an environment where there's instability, it's no surprise if it starts showing up in their behavior.
And becoming violent.
Do you understand? Or if it starts showing up in their grades, right? But a lot of
witches and wizards.
It's witches and wizards oppressing you that doesn't want your children to be successful. My enemies will not catch me.
Do you know there's some kids that were so stubborn when we were younger? And you know, they grew up in hostile environments, but we didn't understand it that, for school, it was a beat the picking.
Do you understand?
I was like, now that I'm old, I'm just like, this behavior was a trauma response. Like it was a
100%. And the thing is that like kids are sponges. So they literally soak up everything in their environment, right? So if they are seeing mommy and daddy shouting, what are they going to do at school? They're going to shout now. Do you understand? If they are, if mommy and daddy are not even asking them, how many parents were asking you how you are feeling?
My sister. That's why I say my own trauma response is plenty.
Even me that I said my parents were easygoing and stuff like that, I don't think they were asking me, how are you feeling?
Some very personal questions, yeah.
Do you understand? Because a lot of them just wanted to provide.
Yes. They were just literally above water, like trying to figure out this parenting thing.
And just being in that stage of wanting to provide, wanting to, just provide financially, then we can call that a little bit of a trauma response too.
Is it?
Because you're in survival mode. So it's just like, okay, let's get this bread, literally, right? Let's go and make this money. Let's do this, let's do that, right? And you're so focused on that that it's almost like you are laser focused. You're not able to process the other things that are going on, right? So if Junior's grades are slipping, you're not thinking like, what may be going on with Junior? It's like, what's wrong with this boy? After all the money that I've spent and everything like that. And we can't blame them because, well, society is not always kind to us.
And sometimes it trickles down from different generations. From your mother, it's what your mother will experience something, she'll pass it on to children pass it on to them.
Absolutely. Intergenerational trauma is really a thing. It really is a thing. And it's like, it doesn't even have to be as so grand as like the word may seem, but it's like literally, like you said, trickle down effect.
Give me an example.
So an example would be, let's say that somebody's grandparents, grew up in the era of like the Biafra War, right? There was a lot of instability, there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of death, right? And those things are traumatic, right? So they literally had to go into survival mode to remain safe.
Right.
So they had to flee, right? For those who fought, they had to fight, right? So when they are encountered with difficulties, it's those responses that are coming up. Either I fight this thing or I run away from it, right? And so that's grandpa. So now you see that grandpa is always angry. Grandpa is always grumpy, right? And then grandpa is who raised dad, right? And then dad is always angry. He's always grumpy. He doesn't know how to express his displeasure to us, right? And then dad is who is raising me. And now I'm like, why is dad always shouting at me? I can't tell dad what I'm feeling. But then also, dad is the one that is maybe sometimes showing me care and affection, right? So it just trickles down. And if the child is not self-aware enough or doesn't even get the resources that they need, maybe like therapy or even just like exposure to other people, then that's how they're going to raise their own child. And then it just trickles down, literally, like a domino effect.
So what can break it?
Ha. I used to see those people that say I'm a course breaker.
You just said everybody. Some people
I'm a
need to.
generational course breaker.
Do you also, because where I'm coming from,
Uh-huh.
I don't think people worry. I'm not sure to anybody worry, but like, there's so many things that I grew up seeing as a child that, that's informed the person that I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only recently I started realizing that a lot of things that we were going through at the time, kids were not supposed to experience that.
Absolutely.
And it formed somebody like me. So you see a lot of adults who are a total mess.
Mm-hmm.
Some are better than some others, especially in this Lagos. You understand? You just see some people who are like, what kind of character it is?
Mm-hmm.
But now that I understand like childhood trauma and everything, I'm just like, I don't blame you guys as much, but get help.
Yes, exactly. See, trauma is it's not an excuse.
Yeah.
It provides context.
Yes.
It provides context as to a person's behavior, as to how a person has adapted, has had to adapt, right? Because the thing about our bodies, especially our brain, is that like when it's exposed to pain, it wants to keep us safe.
Yes.
Right? So it's going to adapt. It's going to find a way
ways,
to exactly.
different.
And some of those like adaptations, they're not helpful. They're not healthy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you may not even know that they exist. But this is where community has to come in. Somebody should be able to say that, bros, this behavior, it ain't it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not it. But the thing is that because, again, our society, we're not really one that like pride accountability and being able to like, checks and balances, call people out. So somebody may not even, that's why you might see like a 50, 60-year-old with bad behavior and everybody has just been like, that's how guys
is. There's one until I know that that's very badly behave auntie in this industry. But I'm not going to call her name.
Please don't.
I'm not going to call her, because if I call her name, she will destroy me. Even she's so full of it. And I've forgiven her.
Yeah.
Because even looking at my own background, I'm just like, there's a reason why this person in my family acts like this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why this woman acts like this, right? But it's still not good. Like, it's still not okay for the rest of us to accept such behavior. But you can tell that this woman went through it.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
So, like I said, like trauma is not an excuse. It's context. Because even with something as controversial as like maybe somebody that like assaults people.
Right.
We can sometimes see and find out that they experience assault. Exactly. Right. So they experience like childhood bullying, childhood abuse, maybe it was sexual abuse, like emotional abuse, right? And so they're perpetrating and repeating the behavior that they've experienced. However, it's not an excuse. Like it is context, but it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for us to then accept that behavior as okay. Because it's not. It's never okay to cause harm to people.
For me, we're going to talk about trauma a lot on this podcast because I feel like
it's my favorite thing to talk about.
As much as this is almost like an expose for what trauma and mental health really is, also for me as well. But I want to also quickly understand the different types of mental health issues because people only talk about depression. We're going to talk about depression, but I want to know the range. What are the other issues that are there beyond the very popular depression? Yeah,
there's a lot. So we have an entire, we have something called the DSM, which is like the Diagnostic Manual of just mental disorders. So,
because a lot of people don't know that they have mental disorders. I know that at least I have one or two.
Don't kill me.
God, but Jesus has healed me.
Hallelujah. So you've mentioned one, depression, major depressive disorder. And even under depression, there's different things. There's postpartum depression.
Right.
There is PDD. There's persistent depressive disorder. There is PMDD. That has to do with like ladies and our cycle. Our cycle and the hormones just like messing us up. But then also there's like anxiety as well, which is a common one. So there's generalized anxiety disorder. Under that, we have panic disorder, which is where somebody may be having frequent panic attacks. We have social anxiety. That's another one that people like to,
I developed
reclaiming.
that. No, not a joke.
Okay.
It's a thing.
Really?
We'll talk about it. It's a thing.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you're in this industry. That's
I
interesting.
pretend like I'm okay, but I'm not.
So like you're sweaty and like on the
I'm
inside.
sweaty, I can't breathe well. Like it's crazy. Like I'm good before I enter a space.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
These days.
Okay. So yeah, we have social anxiety, we have phobias as well. So like, phobias of heights, phobias of flying, things like that.
Phobias are also like part of the disorder, like a disorder?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought it was a natural thing that came with different human beings.
No, so I mean, it is, but the thing about a mental disorder is it literally has to interfere with your daily functioning, right? So with phobias, if you're not able to, let's say you have a phobia of flying, right? Most people, they can get around it and stuff like that. But this one, if you have a diagnosed disorder, you can't get around it. If your job says you have to fly to Abuja, you're not getting on that damn plane because it's like,
and there's some people who, like, for the rest of us, like, why can't you just fly? But some people who, if they fly, they will die.
They feel like they will die. they feel like their world is gonna tumble. Right? And that is interfering with their daily functioning because with the example of their job sending them to Abuja, their job is at risk now if they don't, get on that plane. Right? So phobia. Another mental disorder that people like to throw around a lot is OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder. It's just
I can't stand Lagosians. I have an OCD. Please get out.
Guys, please, let me talk to you people. Yes. You don't want OCD. Like, you really don't, because it's a serious mental disorder. Like, you feel like, it's not just like, oh, I need to arrange this like this. If not...
My manager always says, I have OCD. I say, please.
No, please don't claim.
No, like, he's cray-cray, but like, OCD?
No, so like, OCD is like, you feel like you have to engage in those compulsions in order for you to feel fine. So for example, if I had OCD, I would feel like I had to move this cup.
Yeah, so it's aligned.
Exactly, in order for me to feel settled. But I may not even feel settled. So you see me fidgeting with the cup. Exactly, right? And it's like, it's not because, oh, I want to arrange this pillow nicely that I now have OCD. No, it literally interferes with your daily function. So imagine if you're like, oh, Funmto, pass me the cup. And I'm like,
oh, so it's deeper than just even wanting things to be in proper
Yes, it's deeper than that. It's going to affect my relationships. It's going to affect my work, right? It's going to affect my daily interactions. Again, in order for something to be a mental disorder, it has to affect our daily functioning. Right? So
half the people that in Lagos who think that it's so fancy,
they don't have OCD.
What
Guys, you just like things in a particular order, like you're arranged. That's fine. Like it's okay. It's okay to be neat. It's okay.
I have a friend that would say
it's okay.
I have a friend that would say, oh, my OCD, my and every time he does it, I'm just like
Naru. Because you're just like, which OCD?
Oh, my OCD will not allow me. I said, please rest. So because the people throw it around a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, it's really, people that have OCD, like, it's really difficult for them to go around life in a normal way, right? Because they feel like they have to engage in those compulsions in order to reduce the anxiety that they feel.
What are examples of those compulsions?
So one would be with like just arranging things. Another would be with like maybe like washing their hands. Right? This is not even like COVID though. Like just washing their hands. Another one would be like maybe with like door handles. Right? Yeah. So I need to shut the door in a particular way, or I need to do it a number of times. There's a lot of repetition that goes into it because it's like, that repetition is going to give me like comfort. It's going to ease the anxiety or the unsettledness that I feel, but it usually doesn't.
So how do they live with that?
Therapy.
Drugs?
Some people have to get on medication too. Yeah. It's really difficult.
I think people in Lagos who experience this and Nigeria generally.
I'm sure there are. I mean, going back to the question.
Because let me tell you something, right? As I said, like, mental health is a new concept for us in Nigeria. Maybe other parts of the world, yes, right? And obviously the people who have been living like this, they've been termed something else. Witchcraft, crazy, different things. So like, now that we now know that these things exist, are there what is the demography of people who are living with mental health disorder? Like, are they numbers? Are they actual numbers that show that this is what people are going through?
Yeah, there are. So in Nigeria, I'm not sure what the exact numbers are because that's another thing. We don't have a lot of research.
Right.
But with the WHO, with the World Health Organization, I think the last time I looked at it, I believe it was like 1 in 8 people in the world have some form of mental disorder, right? I think it was like 978 million people out of the 7 or 8 billion that we
all
are.
of us in Lagos have.
It probably is more because you have to consider like places where they don't do a lot of research, right? Let's even forget Lagos. Your village in Warri, who is going to be asking the chief or the grandmother?
For the No,
do you understand? Like, where is the stats is not going to may not extend to them, right?
Yeah.
So whatever that 1 in 8, 970 something million people rather, it may not be completely inclusive of like, more remote and like rural areas. Another mental disorder that is, I don't want to say it's common, but schizophrenia, right? And that's what people tend to term as like, oh, this person has gone mad. The person that's on the streets and stuff like that, right?
Oh, that's what it's originally called.
So with people that are on the street, I mean, there might be different things, right? But if we look at it, I wouldn't be surprised if like some people have schizophrenia.
How does it show up? And I've heard about it. I know what it is, but give me an example of a situation that somebody becomes schizophrenic. That's the word, right?
Yeah. Or someone has like a schizophrenic breakdown and stuff. Okay.
If you're going to explain to a layman what schizophrenia is, how would you explain it to them?
So I would explain it as a breakdown between thought, emotion, and reality. Right. That was good, huh?
I love it.
So if we look at those three like domains, our thoughts, our emotions, and our reality, they usually are supposed to work in alignment, right? So you may have a thought about something, and then there's an emotion that's evoked, and then that determines how you then navigate the space, right? So with schizophrenia, there's a breakdown in that, which then leads to faulty perceptions. So there can be things like paranoia. So you may have a thought that Temisan is going to kill me. Or actually, Temisan has put, this Lipton is not Lipton. There's poison inside, right? So that's the thought. Then what's the emotion that's evoked? I'm going to be scared, right? And then what is my response?
To react.
Exactly. I got to care for myself. So I'm not going to drink this tea. There's no poison in the Lipton. No.
Yeah, I know. I'm just...
No, but, so then that would then affect how I'm going to interact with the space, how I'm going to interact with the world. And then imagine having thoughts like that constantly, right? So that is essentially what schizophrenia is.
So when people are in the psych ward and they're acting out, to them, in their own world, this is what the reality is.
Exactly.
But to the rest of us, it's like, this one is crazy.
Exactly. I didn't say crazy, but yeah, exactly. So then imagine like somebody who has a job, right, that is a high-level executive, and then they start having these thoughts. Obviously, it's going to show up in their work. Maybe they stop going to work, or maybe they come to work like looking haggard because their gatesman is coming for them and they are running away from their gatesman. Do you understand? That is then going to affect like their job. Maybe they will get fired, right? And then before you know it, they might be on the streets or like depending on like, the care that is around them, right?
So what causes these thoughts?
So it can be a variety of different things. It can be like as a result of like a breakdown. So sometimes this breakdown may seem random, like it might be like genetically influenced. So if there is a history of that in your family, it can also be stress induced, right? So maybe like somebody goes through a very traumatic situation, a very stressful situation, and maybe their brain is trying to like protect them from pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? It might then be like, okay, stay away from this person because this person is going to cause you pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it can be a variety of different things. The environment being stressful,
Mm-hmm.
not taking care of yourself, things like that.
But is this something that can go away with proper therapy and medication?
Exactly. So this is one of those situations where talk therapy would not suffice. We would need medication because we would have to introduce like just the right like chemicals and stuff like that. So the chemicals
balance.
exactly that already exist in our brain, just balancing it. So a good combination would be both talk therapy and medication.
So if we honestly had the facilities for all of this, a lot of people would not run mad.
Yes. Absolutely.
So half of the people who go crazy is just because even the people that are supposed to take care of them and administer
they're not going to. They're not. One, we are just...
because let me say what my issue is.
Tell me.
Where I'm from, when people don't run, I don't run. But
that's it.
Don't go.
Yes, now. And the thing is that like we don't have the facilities. We don't have the facilities in like the physical space, but even just like the labor or talent, if you want to call it, it's like the doctors that are required. There are not a lot of psychiatrists in Nigeria. I think the last time I saw a stat, it was something like 1 in 200 or something like that. Or maybe it was like 200 in the entire nation. And this can be something like not everybody's practicing.
Yes.
Some people are professors.
Teaching.
Exactly. Right?
A bunch of people who come as are not still big psychiatrists.
Exactly. So yeah, it's like the
manpower was not even enough to carry all the crazy...
Instability.
I'm so sorry. I hope they don't cancel me because I think these words are I should be more sensitive.
We should all be sensitive.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. We're learning.
Please don't cancel me. But one word that gets thrown around so much is depression. All the Gen Zs are depressed. Everybody's depressed in Lagos. If you send them to work, I'm depressed. If they're fucking up at their jobs and it's their fault. Oh my God, I'm depressed. Even my producer has said, so every time I'm sure she's probably depressed right now.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, she's never said that because half the time she looks like she doesn't want to fuck with me. Like, get out.
She actually does look very serious.
Yeah. She's like,
I
can't tell you to your face, but you should stop talking to me. And it's so crazy. And my issue with the people that always claim that they're depressed is that the actual people who really need the help, the actual people who really need to be seen, who need to be heard, they've overshadowed them. So can we understand what depression really is and what's the difference between being depressed and sad? Because there's that.
Absolutely. So if we're looking at clinical depression, right? Clinical depression is a clinical disorder that is marked by persistent low moods. And it usually interferes with daily functioning, like I've said. So loss of interest in activities, loss of like pleasure, not being able to just do things that once brought you pleasure, right? And the thing with, and I can get into like some of the symptoms, but in order for somebody to be diagnosed with clinical depression, they have to be exhibiting 5 out of 8 symptoms for 2 weeks consistently.
Really?
Yes, for 2 weeks consistently. With me as a therapist, even if somebody has met criteria for depression, like just off the bat,
You just don't diagnose?
I don't, because I want to get more context. Like, did you just lose a loved one? If you're exhibiting some of those symptoms, that is a healthy reaction, right? Because it's like you've lost a loved one. Right. But some of those symptoms are loss of interest in activities. So changes to your sleep, whether that's like sleeping more, sleeping less, persistent sadness, low moods, constant crying, irritability, changes in your behavior, in your feeding behavior. So whether that's like eating more, eating less, loss of interest in activities, like I said, changes to like your sex drive, for example, And again, these things have to be present for 2 weeks and they have to interfere with your daily functioning. Changes to your hygiene, for example, right? Somebody may not be bathing as much. They may not be caring for themselves, right? And you can see how like having those symptoms persistently for 2 weeks would clearly affect, exactly, it will show and it will affect your daily functioning, right? Because if you've lost interest in activities, you're going to have a hard time going to work. Right?
Or even engaging your friends.
Exactly. Or even picking up your calls or something. Right?
That's interesting because I have like some of those symptoms.
So, but then that's the thing though, like...
Oh, I went through some of those symptoms before Jesus found me.
Glory.
Yeah, but like...
But that's the thing, like having some of those symptoms, having some of those experiences doesn't mean that you then meet
the criteria.
The criteria, exactly, or that you now have depression. I've had those symptoms too.
But so from last year up until sometime this year, I didn't like my job.
Okay.
I didn't want to do Tea With Tay pod. In fact, that's why I didn't come back until like 4 months after. I wasn't interested in getting bookings. Every day was just like, let me just get through today. Fast forwarding to like now, right? I'm just like, was I depressed? Because there's so many things that I didn't want to do. Even now, I'm just beginning to get back into myself, like the things that I like.
Yeah.
Is that long-term sadness or it was borderline depression?
I mean, so it could have been depression. You could have experienced a depressed... See, yeah, therein lies the issue. Should we call Pastor?
I swear. Okay, guess what? What I did when I was feeling like that?
What?
I went to church. I said, God, maybe I've left you for too long.
But that's the thing, like maybe there were other factors that were going on, right? Maybe you were just unsatisfied with your career.
Exactly.
And maybe you were burnt out, Temisan.
Oh, that's the word. So there's also a difference between being burnt out and being depressed.
Yes, because
I was exhausted in my soul.
Exactly. If you're exhausted in your soul, how are you going to wake up and say, well, all right, let's go and do Tea With Tay?
No, but the truth is that I've always thrived on the fact that, you know, I can be many things. I can be sad, but when it comes to my career, I'm alive.
At some point, your body's just like, you got to chill. If you don't chill, I'm going to make you chill.
Really? But I chilled for too long.
Are you sure?
Look, let me give you context, right? The only time I worked was when my management needed me to work. So, off the top of my head, I would not naturally just get out of my bed for anything.
So, but then you responded to your management needing you to work.
Right.
If you had a clinical disorder, that management, let management be calling you, you're not moving.
Are you serious?
You're not moving. You are not, where are you going?
But one of the things that I struggle with, like mentally, I'd already... So I was there, but I wasn't present.
Like you were dissociating?
Yeah.
Disassociating.
Like, you know, I wasn't excited for... Like, usually when I'm coming to work, when I'm coming to do... I'm just always very like, oh yeah, this is my thing, let's do it. Even if this is a system I already have.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always looking forward to something else, right? But for most of last December, all those trips I was taking, like, I was losing it. Like, I literally just wanted to breathe. So I don't know if it was a meltdown, if I don't know.
Yeah.
Because depression would have been extreme, right?
I mean, like, if you had depression.
Like, it would have been more extreme. I mean...
It could have been. Like, so, I mean, but then some people may have, like, high-functioning depression, right? In that, like, they're able to... You see how you were still able to travel and some of those things. You were still able to do it, right? So it's almost like you put on a mask, right? Because it's like, you got to do what you got to do. But on the inside, you're not feeling good. You're not present, right? So you're still able to function in the ways that, like, you need to. But Temisan, like, I'm hearing more of burnout too.
Okay, so what most of us have
unsatisfaction.
You can be burnt out.
You can be burnt out.
How long can you be burnt out for?
There's no clause.
So now that you're saying it, makes sense that I was probably burnt out because I've been working for a long time.
Yeah.
My career was taking a toll on me.
Yes.
For the first time, I was handling more than I would usually handle, right? And I just felt like I didn't have the resources to hold me up. Like, the right people to speak to, Because I was, I can be in a sea of my friends, but I will feel so alone. Everything's happening internally.
So you didn't really have, like, although you had community, you weren't really getting community support.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's not depression.
No. It could be, right? But from what you've described, it sounds like you were burnt out. If you're saying you were exhausted, that might be burnout, right? But it's also possible to experience some of these depressive symptoms, but not have clinical depression.
Right.
So I'll use myself as an example. After I finished my master's, 2019, December. 2020, COVID now. So before lockdown, March 2020, I didn't have, I was having a hard time, just like finding what I wanted to do, right? So I was like applying and things like that, right? And then when lockdown happened, I was like, Grace, you could come and join me. I've been sitting in the house already, so come and do what I've been doing, right? But then there was a period where I was finding it hard to motivate myself. I couldn't get out of bed. I got out of bed to do two things, to pee and to eat. And I'm returning back to that bed. I
was at my biggest. I had depression with that.
I saw a picture of myself and I was like, damn.
I saw a picture of myself on Nasisime's show. I'm like, who is this? I don't know this boy.
Like, I gained weight. I was crying a lot. My self-esteem was in the gutter.
The last self-esteem, Come on, let's talk about last self-esteem, in the mud.
It was in the trash, like at the bottom. And I then asked myself, I was like, wait, Funmto,
how did you get
here? Are
you
you experiencing depression right now? And shout out to my therapist. I had my therapist at the time.
You had a therapist too?
Yes, now. Doctor get doctor now.
You need that more because all this is really here.
Do you understand?
Oh, wow.
So I was seeing my therapist at the time and I was telling her, and it was just like, yeah, like you are having a depressive, you're experiencing depressive symptoms, right? But if I looked at it, it wasn't consistent for 2 weeks, right? And even if it was, right, there were some days where like it was brighter. I was still able to like motivate myself on some days, right? Like that wasn't my lived reality for the entire 2 weeks, right? And that was a normal reaction because guess what? I was having a difficult time finding a job, right? It's enough to make somebody experience some of those symptoms now when you're trying to figure out like
your
life, what's next and stuff like that. And another thing was I was in America at the time and I would notice that whenever it was winter, my mood was in the gutter. And it was my therapist that also pointed out that there's something called seasonal affective disorder, right? So your mood changes with the winter. And that was also around winter too.
Right.
So it's like, it reached to...
So all of these things...
but it doesn't mean that like I had a clinical diagnosis of depression. It was just that my circumstances, I was reacting to my circumstances, and those reactions happened to mirror those symptoms of depression.
But how do you snap out of it? Let's talk about snapping out of that depressive state.
Yeah. So there's something called like opposite action, right? So if like in that depressive state, you want to just lie down in bed, how about for like 5 minutes, you just sit up? You sit up in bed, right? That doesn't sound overwhelming, right? Because if I tell you, okay, no, get out of bed, jump up and down, that's not going to sound,
like doable.
Do you understand? It's going to sound like that might even make you feel even more depressed.
Yes,
I can't do this.
Yeah.
So just opposite action, and you can break it down into small steps. All right, for 5 minutes, I'm going to sit up on the bed. And then you see that after you sit up, then if somebody tells you that, okay, maybe let's sit on the couch, right? That doesn't seem as overwhelming. So it's just doing the opposite of what like, what the depression might be telling you to do, but in like small baby steps, right? Maybe it's opening up the windows. Because guess what? I had my blinds closed. I didn't want to see no sunlight. Maybe it's opening up the windows. Maybe it's
eating less. Because I ate too.
Maybe it's eating healthier meals.
Okay, healthier meals.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like stepping outside.
I didn't want to be seen.
But that's the thing, Temisan. I didn't say go somewhere. I said step outside. Step outside. You can have stepped in front of your door.
Right. So just small actions that would...
Exactly. If you had a balcony, you could have gone on your balcony. But guess what? Sun has touched your body. You've breathed in fresh air. It's no longer AC recycled air. Right? And that just does something.
So this is a gradual process for you to get out of that mental space.
Absolutely. But the thing is that like, we're not always patient. And that can be even with us as people or us as people experiencing it, or like us supporting people experiencing it.
Right.
So this is a tip for you. If you have a friend or a loved one that is experiencing some of those things, baby steps. Maybe you can help them with like bringing food to their house, or even offering to clean their house for them. Or maybe it's like, you tell them, walk me to the car now. Like, I just came to see you. Just walk me to the car.
But a lot of people can't even tell when their friends are going through a phase like that. Because a lot of my friends couldn't tell. They always just... So I had a friend who always used to fight me because I was not present. I was not available. And now with benefit of hindsight, I'm just like, I needed something more than... Like, I couldn't show up for you guys because this was where I was. But I couldn't also tell you guys because I've always been strong. So like...
You see, that's what you just said. I've always been strong.
I've always been strong.
No, therein lies our issue. We have an issue with vulnerability.
We're going to talk about vulnerability, but I need to let us finish depression talk. So let us finish depression. Let's soak it, right? So, but if someone was clinically diagnosed as depressed, right? What are the steps to getting out of that depression?
So, okay, if I had a client or clients that I've worked with that have depression, we're developing a toolbox, right? So I'm helping them to recognize when they're in that state, right? So maybe it's that they start seeing that, I'm not sleeping as well, or I'm sleeping too much, right? So that you can start to recognize that, okay, something is shifting. So we're recognizing first, we're coming up with coping tools, right? And so I just gave some examples, some of those things. But then also we are taking things one step at a time. If I feel as though like medication may be needed, I would suggest that, right? And some people, they do need medication, right? We are doing things like maybe interacting more with people, but on a slower and sustainable, in a slow and sustainable pace. We are doing things like increasing physical activity. And physical activity doesn't mean that we're now going to the gym. It just means that, okay, maybe we're going to walk in the compound, right? We're doing things like that. And consistency. Consistency is the name of the game, man. Because all these things that I've said, you can do it for one day and it's just like, this is trash. It doesn't make any damn sense, right? But if you consistently do it for a number of time, right, you would find that like your mood would start lifting. It will start changing for the better.
But you know what's also interesting, right? Is how you can be in a depressive state to the point where you can take your life.
Absolutely.
Because, one day, I don't know if I should share this, because one day I was driving and, and this was in the heat of like my Temisan entering town and, getting popular. Something just whispered to me that, if God takes you today, right, you've done it. You've done it. Like you've done it.
Yeah.
And I said, Holy Spirit, what kind of evil thought is this?
I rebuke it.
But for the first time, it made sense why people who are depressed can take their own lives, because you're in your own world, right? So how bad can it get that the person would consider just ending it?
Man, it can get really bad that some of like those symptoms that I've spoken about is literally your only reality. And it's just like, I
I'm
need an
tired.
out. I need an out to just stop the pain. I need an out to get relief. I need something, right? I need an out. And it can get that bad, right? That it's just like, I just want an escape. And oftentimes, something that's very insensitive that people would say is that like, oh, suicide is like selfish and stuff like that. Like, don't they think about like other people? Yeah. Sometimes people that have had like suicidal thoughts, they think the negative thoughts are on 100 that they think that they're doing their family a favor by no longer existing.
That must be crazy.
Yeah, like it's really difficult. It's really difficult for you to feel like the lives of other people will be better if you're not there. So it's not that you're being selfish in that like you're not thinking about other people. You're thinking about other people, but just like in the reverse.
Like, let me just go so that you can.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another word that's thrown around is anxiety. I use it a lot. Right? I haven't like to think that I've developed social anxiety. Just help me understand what anxiety is and also social anxiety as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, anxiety gets thrown around a lot because like it is an emotion. Right? It's an emotion.
To a state.
Yes. But when you have an anxiety disorder, right, you remain in that state. So having an anxiety disorder is just remaining in that state of real or perceived fear or danger. So therefore, you have to respond accordingly, right? But with anxiety being an emotion, there are things that would provoke said emotion, right? So for example, if you're doing something new for the first time, it's not abnormal to feel anxiety.
Oh, I'm always anxious about everything new. Even this podcast. But it's so funny. Like I've been recording this podcast for the longest time, and I still have some level of what I call it anxiety. I'm anxious about how it's gonna go.
Okay.
I'm already thinking about the end before, like from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, and some of my best episodes are the ones that I didn't expect so much.
Okay. Yeah, the ones where you like were more settled.
Yeah. So the ones that I expect, like, this is going to be a big guest, it's going to do the numbers, probably doesn't. It's the ones I'm so anxious about. Like, hey, God, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You come out well. But then again, it doesn't take away the feeling. Like, it's always a fear of, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm always scared of a lot of things. Yeah. And recently I realized that, when I'm out in some public spaces, I'm always looking over my shoulder, like I know they're watching me and they're talking about me. Which before I never used to have an issue. In fact, I used to run towards it. I used to embrace it. I loved the attention. But over time, I just realized that even when I'm out, I'm just like, look at you go my house.
Yeah. So that can be social anxiety. Right? That shows up in like social spaces.
Right.
Right. Where you just feel unsettled, you feel anxious, you're having some of those like physical symptoms of anxiety, your palms are sweaty, your stomach is it's just turning on its own. You're having like intrusive thoughts.
I feel like my chest is tight.
You find it hard to breathe. Right. So that can be social anxiety, right? Like just being exposed to a gathering of sorts or like a space, right? So it's a social event, right? And the thought of that like evokes like those feelings of anxiety.
Let's talk about relationships, right?
Yeah.
I can literally infer from the slightest, like, and that might not be the case soon. From the slightest inconvenience that, it's because of who I am. That's why this one is dim like this. So to avoid see finish.
You're going to leave, You're going to flight.
I feel like that's why most of us in this generation are in relationships.
Yeah, no.
We're not ready.
Yeah, we're not. And also, like, I mean, it's not our fault because, like, the culture that we live in doesn't really applaud vulnerability, right? If somebody's having an emotional response, again, that is healthy, we tell, especially men, we tell them, stop crying now. Be strong. Even, Temisan, the older I've gotten and the more that life has happened, things like grief, for example, I'm exposed to it, whether that's directly or indirectly, the more that I'm like, oh, this is our culture around grief. You say, it get kelego.
Yes, it does.
Because it's like somebody loses a loved one, you tell them be
Put
strong.
yourself together, be strong, yeah.
Somebody loses a loved one,
you
come to their house and expect them to feed you.
Yes. It's that one.
Somebody loses a loved one, right? A wife loses her husband. She has to stay in the house for 40 days.
That's deep.
And it's like, hello, if somebody is not strong at the loss of a loved one, that is a healthy response. That is a healthy response, right? And there's a lot of, like our culture is not one that really applauds vulnerability. If somebody is, maybe sharing how an experience or, sharing their feelings, right? We don't receive it well.
Do you know that? Because I've forgiven niggas. I hang out with niggas now. Niggas are my nigga. Like I have a lot of niggas now. You understand? Because I'm also a nigga.
Yeah, come on.
I don't go to
you added muscle.
I don't have muscles. I'm one of the niggas. But when you speak to men, if you find out the emotional mess that they are, so when I see, what I always tell my friends, you need to calm down for this nigga because this is a trauma. This is something.
Yes.
Men need more therapy than men need to be soaked in therapy.
My dear.
It's so crazy that I met a man who says he can never be vulnerable with his wife because she will use it against him. That's too deep. Somebody that's your soulmate that you're married to.
Somebody they are sleeping next to.
Do you understand? And a lot of men cannot honestly tell women how they feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's like a vicious cycle because guess what?
They're raising boys like that.
Exactly. But then also they may have told someone how they feel or they may have... Exactly. Yeah. Right? Or they use it against them or they say, you're not acting like a man.
And in this society, you need to be a man.
You need to be a man now.
Because I could just never fit in because I was raised by women, strong women, by the way. But I was soft in a way that wasn't good to be around other strong niggas. So getting older and realizing that these niggas are not as strong as because I have a friend that when I would speak to, he would cry. The thing used to trigger me. I'm like, hey, I'm so grateful.
Stop it.
And I'm telling you that this person I'm talking about is taller than me, like on a regular day. And
anyone can get it.
Bad bitches, they fall. And the things that he was crying about, he's just like, acceptance from his father. His father never seen him. I said, but you are rich now.
But see, what does riches have to do with that? Daddy ain't there, daddy ain't there.
I don't want to tell my daddy issues, but I think my daddy issues, we don't close this podcast. If I start. But it just shows that, a lot of, maybe men need to talk to men more.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
I agree.
Let's say we cannot trust women as much, right? Because they will use it against them. But can we talk to ourselves?
Yes, and let one of your bros tell you that, bro, it's okay.
I'm also going to do the same thing.
I understand.
Let me say another thing that's so crazy. How a lot of men attach their self-worth to money. That has never been my issue.
Come on. I
have niggas that, I don't know, this nigga is writing to be used on this podcast. I have bros that...
It's a little too late now.
Yeah, we're already nigga up the podcast. But I have bros who cannot walk up to a woman and not in a good mental state when they don't have money. Their self-worth is attached to money.
Yeah.
I know men that will say, when I make money, I finally date the girl I want. Even in this company, right? I feel call one boy with the downstairs, we say, the whole life. Now, when I finally become this
then I can
do this.
Yeah.
And that's why you see them striving,
Yes.
struggling.
Yes.
My own not bad like that. So I don't say my own bad, but my own not bad like that. Because, you know, they are so exhausted, they're so in their heads that they can't say it.
Yeah.
I know people who don't drink, who come to the club and buy drinks for everybody just to feel
Liked. Yeah.
And it's such a miserable space to be in when your entire self-worth is hinged on the things that you have. So it means that the day that you stop having those things, you will not be worthy to the people around you.
Yeah.
So it means that you're also in constant need to. You can't be broke. You know, the anxiety level is going to be different.
Going to be through the freaking roof. But then guess what? It will show up as you hustling.
Yes.
And society will applaud that. So it's like, as a people, we're doing ourselves, man. Because guess what? Culture is made up of people, right? So there really needs to be a shift in culture and just society and how we treat people, right? Like, just if you're a bro and one of your bros is crying, tell the bro it's okay.
Baba, what's with that? Baba, stop that thing. Guy. Look at them funny themselves. If I cry here, what this man will say, this one is the worst. Not him saying you guys my say, this is the culprit, these are the culprits. If I break down now, and you know, guess what? I used to be a cry out. I didn't cry before.
When was the last time you cried?
My friend. If it's not in presence of my savior. I was like, my savior don't get that tears. Sometimes Jesus, I'm like, Jesus, you're not going to get this tear. That's how crazy it has become.
Yeah.
I used to be a crybaby. So I feel like if we keep speaking, we'll speak till evening. Because
absolutely.
This is almost a session for me. Right? But I
should bill you.
Yeah. But I just really want you to just give us a final note on how important therapy and mental health and this entire conversation is for us, especially now.
Yeah. You know, it's super important. A lot of people are struggling and they don't know that they're struggling. So there are things that you can do as the person that's struggling, and there are things that you can do as someone that knows somebody that is struggling. So if you are struggling, talk to somebody, right? Maybe it's a trusted person that is like, okay, bro, I'm not feeling good, right? And hopefully you're surrounded by people that can respond well to you. Talk to somebody, consider seeing a therapist, right? I mean, reaching out to a therapist is just it's the first step in the right direction, right? And hopefully you're paired with somebody that knows what they're talking about. I mean, if you come to Ibi Ayo, you don't have to worry about that. But, but you know, talking to a professional, right? A lot of people think that when they think about starting therapy, they're like, how many sessions would I need? Am I going to be in therapy forever? And let's not even focus on that. Let's focus on right now. Let's focus on getting you the help that you need. If you know somebody that could benefit from therapy, maybe it's suggesting it to them, but also leaving room for them to get to that point on their own. Right. So it's like, okay, here are the resources. Here are the therapists that I know about. You know, maybe it's even taking things a step further by saying, I'm happy to pay for one session. I'm happy to pay for, a bundle or whatever, right? But we also have to make sure that we're not weaponizing therapy as you need therapy. Your problem is more, who's going to respond well to that? No one's going to respond well to that, right? So we need to treat people well.
With care.
I feel like a lot of the things that we've spoken about, we've touched on community. Right? So this shows up in how we are to other people and also how people are to us, right? So making sure that we're surrounded with the right community and making sure that we are being empathetic, we're being vulnerable. Part of being vulnerable is telling somebody that, hey, the way you acted that day, I didn't like it. It hurt me or it made me angry. Right? So just doing our part as just good people, supporting them with the resources that they need. And, there's hope, right? Things are hard, people are struggling, and there is hope. There's hope on the other side.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Funmto.
Thank you for having me.
Please, can you help me sign out on my show?
Hi, guys. My name is Funmto Ogunbanwo. I'm a clinical mental health therapist and the founder of Ibi Ayo, and I just spill tea with Tay. In this episode, we talk about everything mental health related, from depression to trauma to anxiety, and it's one that you definitely want to watch. I think that you should share it with everyone and just have a good time watching it. And if you're looking for a therapist, please come check us out at Ibi Ayo. We offer therapy services to individuals, couples, family, and as well as wellness services to organizations. For the month of November, we're actually having a workshop called Unraveling Anxiety. It's a virtual workshop where you can learn about anxiety, how it shows up, and just empowering you with the coping tools to walk through anxiety. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.